Hello, and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. We're back in Westeros, fire is raining, and war is at hand. I'm your guest host, Ebube, and I'm joined by my guest co host, Afam. And I think he has a lot of thoughts on what we've just seen in episode three. I'm still reeling from episode two, but yeah, Fami, how you feeling?
It's good to be back. We obviously had a contract dispute with Bancolia last week, so we couldn't record any episodes. But we've papered out the cracks, and we're back here ready to share in-depth knowledge in the world of Westeros. And obviously, these episodes have been bangers, back-to-back hits. Can't complain. We're here for the ride.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And this contract dispute, man, like, it's his fault, honestly, because he breached his part of the deal. Daniel Kaluuya canceled. So so now I don't know. That's something we're gonna have to deal with later, but it's okay. We're here to fix the messes. But what are your general thoughts on before we get into everything that we just saw? This was a bombastic episode. How are you feeling about episode three? I mean episode two. How are you feeling about episode two?
Episode two was good. It right now I'm having low key having like it's a bit difficult for me to remember exactly what went on, but I know the feeling that when I came out of it, I was like, God damn, this is gonna be a good season. And it's shaping up to be a good season of television for me. It's taking apart like, the plot and the nuances and the characters, everything, the setting, the sets, the sound, everything. Just we have good scores. Everything just looking really good. I'm very excited.
Yeah, Ramin is still being Ramin, and I thank
Shout
God
out
for
to Ramin.
that. Let's do a quick recap of episode two, just for everybody who missed us this week. We missed you too. Um, First of all, Daemon versus Otto. Everything Daemon does this episode in episode two was interesting. From his general audacity to his overall dishonesty. I mean, Mizaria is looking at him like, "Oh, I'm pregnant now, huh? Very good, very very good. I mean, you didn't tell me about this, and I didn't know we are gonna get married. But please enjoy your dragon egg." And I thought that was very cool because he's out here making moves that are going to further his own agenda, and she feels like she's along for the ride. But I think that she's starting to see that maybe Damon is kind of looking out for Damon, and that in the end he doesn't actually value her as much as she values him. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how that progresses. And I know we talked about in episode one the um, the way that the tone was set for violence, and I think it's really important because this is a way more violent story than the original Game of Thrones series, and perhaps even more scandalous. I think if it's going to end up being a lot for some people, that is somewhat necessary. I think Daemon behaves the way he does because Viserys doesn't trust him, and Viserys doesn't trust Daemon because he acts the way that he does. So it's like there's in this vicious cycle where the sincere love they have for each other is trapped, and then that propagates into a lot of the tension that we see in the series.
Yeah.
You know, um, because they have this secret, of course, with the prophecy that was revealed in episode one. We don't know right now if Damon knows about it because he was the heir to Viserys, but he was more like an heir presumptuous. He wasn't really an heir apparent. I don't think Viserys ever named him his heir. Damon just happened to be the heir, and everybody accepted that because Viserys had no true-born male children, right? So we of course the dream is about Aegon getting up to conquer, not just for the heck of it, but we kind of look at how each monarch has furthered that cause. Um, Maegor is Maegor. Aenys was doing whatever he was doing. He's kind of forgettable, but we see how Jaehaerys, for example, built the King's Road, and you know that chain of revelation from king to heir was broken with Ares II, the Mad King, because of course nobody told Robert about this, right? So the for about 20 years, the whole kingdom kind of gets into this new state of decadence, but like it's not really directed. It's kind of just Robert not actually ruling the kingdom or even trying to rule, and he doesn't know that there's a threat. And of course, you have nobody taking it seriously because of that, because the king isn't directing certain things to happen with this prophecy in mind, because of course in this case the king doesn't know the prophecy. You then have people like Tywin who feel like, as he said, quote unquote, curiosities on the far side of the world are of no consequence to us. Shout out to Charles Dance. But
That's such a great performance.
that man owned every scene he was in. Like
Yep.
he didn't need to flex like that, but he's just like, yeah, I'm senior to
Yep.
all of you. I just need you to remember that. um, and the ironic thing for me is I don't know if we can trust that Robert would actually have done anything about the prophecy, even if he knew, because
Oh,
he would, because he
I
was
think he
too
would
busy
have.
being Robert.
I think he
What do you
would
think he would
have.
have done?
Because
Okay.
Roberts was not a ruler, but Robert was a fighter. Like the two
Mhm.
happiest he was ever in, like in the original source material was not source material. The original books was when he was fighting the rebellion against the Mad King, and when he was fighting the rebellion against the Greyjoy, so Theon Greyjoy and his family. Robert was a bad ruler, but he just wanted to fight. He often talked to Ned about how he wished he could just give away the throne and just go into Essos and become a sellsword, fighting, pointless wars and drinking and whoring, because that's what he loved to do. So I
Yeah,
think like the concept of like Robert's this the fighting the Night King could have been Robert's like ultimate fight. He's like fighting a literally an unwinnable fight, and
his magnum opus.
exactly it would have been his magnum opus of a fight. I look, think Robert would have like, I think he would have
Yeah,
liked it. It would have been his
that's
kind
a
of
fair
thing.
point.
Yeah,
That's a fair point.
and he would have been with Ned, his best friend,
True.
his kids, his Ned's kids. I don't
Well,
know.
his best friend until he finds out that Ned actually hid the son of his sworn enemy
Oh shit,
for
that would
about
have
two
been.
decades.
Then he would have killed everybody.
Yeah, that would have been a bit of an issue, especially since
It's like,
he was still sending people to kill Daenerys on the
yeah,
far side of the world.
literally, he was. He was.
Oh, Mormont, oh Mormont.
I do. Shout out to him.
But yeah, I think we see a lot of the new direction of like the potential of where the series could go with just how the kingdom currently is. Anyway, um, Jaehaerys was great, and Viserys inherited a really favorable kingdom. But we see that in episode two, Viserys talks a lot about old Valyria, and he's telling Alicent certain things, and she's asking him things about um, like how possible it is for old Valeria to kind of come back. And Viserys admits that it's not going to ever see that kind of glory again. I think that is a reasonable assumption. So you finally said something right, Viserys. I'm proud of you. It's good to know that he's not deluded about that, but he's still deluded about a lot of things because historically the Valyrians weren't really all that great morally, right? With their racial superiority complex,
Yeah,
enslaving free people wherever they found them, their
yeah,
equal opportunity enslavement. It kind of
yeah.
reminds you of a certain other extremely zealous group in our real world that was very active during the Second World War. But but I'm gonna say that Viserys consistently looking to the Valyrians for inspiration and guidance in such a fanboyish way. It sort of shows us that despite his deep interest in the histories, he doesn't really understand them all that much,
Yeah,
and he hasn't learned the lessons. And I think this ignorance fuels the entitled passivity he has as he rules, which allows Otto to walk all over him, Melos to make decisions without telling him. It's just a whole thing really. And Otto is basically a Tywin who doesn't yet have the entire realm scared to death of him, right? He's making moves to become that guy, right? He
yeah.
even succeeds in some ways where Tywin couldn't. For example, I mean, he's managed to marry his daughter to the king, which I almost want to say shout out to him, but then I feel for Alicent. But then again, should I be feeling for Alicent? We'll get into that later. But he did succeed in doing that, whereas Tywin famously tried to get Rhaegar Targaryen and Cersei married, and Aerys snubbed that marriage, that proposal, and I think that was kind of one of the final straws in their relationship.
Yeah.
He marries Rhaegar to Elia Martell, and then eventually the whole thing with Lyanna starts, and in the war, Tywin didn't side with Aerys. He actually sacked the city. It was kind of wild, but who knows if we'll see anything like that here? I don't know. Wink, wink. But it's sort of we see all these different betrayals, and even though we don't exactly know what the TV show is going to do, we do know that there's going to be a lot of disagreements. I like that the great houses really come together in episode 3, And we can see the seeds for that planted in episode 2 when we start hearing about certain people coming in. We start to see some of them actually in front of our eyes in episode 3. And I think that's pretty cool. But speaking of great houses and symbols and things like that, how are you feeling about our brand new title sequence?
It's a plus. So for those who aren't aware, the new title sequence is kind of, at least to me, a play of Fire and Blood. So what it is it's showing the bloodline from Aegon the Conqueror to present day in the Westeros Sea World. So Aegon the Conqueror is obviously the person. Actually, no. Let me rephrase that. The title sequence starts from Valeria because the first image you see is of dragons flying around Valeria, and then it trickles down by showing blood, and it shows blood because the bloodline must remain pure and all that kind of stuff, and it's basically just showing a path from how Valeria, a path from Valeria to Viserys, who's currently the king. So it goes through Aegon. You see his two sister wives, and then it branches out a bit because on one branch you have Maegor, and you want to interject?
No, yeah, no, you're right because Migor is in there, and I
Yep.
like how we see Migor coming out of the darkness that is Visenia's circle, which is covered in blood, and they
Yeah.
breeze through Migor because nobody wants to talk about him, which is really
Yeah.
funny. I like
Yep.
how Rainey's little symbol is a dragon with a spear through the eye,
Bolted eye.
bec-
Yep.
because that's how she
That's how she
died.
had died. Yeah.
She was trying to get Dorne, and they weren't gonna give up their fight, and
Yep.
she ends up getting shot out of the sky, which is kind of a hint as to how dragons aren't quite vulnerable. We see that in the actual Game of Thrones series, but I wonder how much of that we're going to see here. Lots of
Yep.
dragons this season. I
Yep.
think we have a lot going on with that. But yeah, as you said, it's going to go down from
Yeah.
Rhaenys because
So
everybody's descended from there. Yeah,
from there, so from Rhaenys, it went to, who was her son? Ares the first. Was that who was
Ennis. It was Ennis,
Ares?
and
Yep.
we
So
don't
then
even
from
see much of him, right? But
yeah,
we see Jaehaerys, right?
Jaehaerys, yeah. So Ares' son was Jaehaerys, and Jaehaerys was the king we see at the beginning of season one, who called the Great Council to choose who's going to be the next king. And he was a long king. I think he ruled for like 50 something years, but he had a lot of children. So when it gets to him, that's my favorite part because he's my
It
favorite
just
Targaryen king. It just spreads
it just
out
spreads out,
to
right?
like a
Yeah.
bunch of different places. But eventually it gets down to Viserys, and he's the current king. But also, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background because you also see Rhaenyra over there because she's marked by, there's a necklace that Daemon gave her in season one when they were in the
Yeah.
throne room speaking
And that
Valerian.
symbol is what they use for her little circle,
Yep,
which doesn't get covered in blood, right? Which that's
yep,
something, if we didn't mention that already, when the circles get covered in blood, like with Rhaenyra's mother in this title sequence, that means the person has passed away. So
yep,
we see that Rhaenyra is still alive, Viserys is still alive, and
yep,
we also see the high towers in the background, right?
yep. You see the high
Um,
towers, and well, we also see the Valerians in the background. So it just
yeah,
basically draws like, whereas the Game of Thrones opening is the same theme song, but the visual part of it was looking through the seven kingdoms. And like for instance, when Winterfell was in the Bolton's hand, when we get to Winterfell, we see a Bolton flayed man on Winterfell, and that always broke my heart. But when the Battle of the Bastards happened, and like Winterfell fell back into the hands of the Starks, we see the House Stark there. So it was always dynamic and it was changing. And there have been some slight changes to the theme. For instance, there was no theme in season one, episode one, but if there was, you'd have seen Emma, who's Rhaenyra's mom, alive, but then she dies at the end of the episode. So by episode two, she'll be dead. And obviously, at this, we see the seeds of war being sown. So
yeah, we
I
do.
hope as the tapestry changes, the theme changes, and that'll be really fun. I'm going to be paying attention very hard because I can't skip that theme song. It gets me so
I
hyped.
exactly. I love how they do that because it's not just that Ramin's music is amazing. It's the fact that they want to keep you paying attention to the politics that are going on,
Yep.
and they hope that you're not going to skip the theme song. They give you a reason to stay and watch it. And I like how we get these little hints. Like for example, in episode 2, we do see that the high towers are there, right? And we see that there is blood running from Otto to Alicent.
Mm-hmm.
We see that there's new blood coming into Alicent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the sort of like a hint that she's going to end up getting married to Viserys by the end of the episode, or at least
Mm-hmm.
betrothed to him. And I think that's really cool because now at the start of episode 3, we see blood running out of Alicent's little post,
Yep.
and that is because Prince Aegon has been born, which is something that we knew. That whole area around the high tower part of the family tree
Yep.
is it has some green mold on the stones,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that's something that we'll tell the good people about later. But I think I think that that shows, like you said, the seeds of war are being sown. I think we see a different kind of sort of visual difference when it comes to the Valarians. We can see like all the like the blue stuff going on there. We see their seahorses, and I like that we see a lot of the Valarians in episode three. So I think this kind of is a good way for us to really think about where the series might be going in terms of the conflicts. And
Yeah.
I think that the title sequence coming back really strong and showing that dynamism you're mentioning is really good for for the audience. I think it's going to keep everybody engaged. But yeah, what's your overall summary of episode three? Let's get into it.
Episode three. I think this whole season is just for me. Just I'm gonna call it House of the Dragon, Hot D season one. Viserys bad
Hmm.
decisions because Homeboy is making. He's having a horrible time of things. It's
He's
there's
so tragic.
he's tragic. So they're different kings. You have Jaehaerys, who is like the king before, who was a great king, the great reconciliator, did a lot of cool things. Obviously, he had a lot of his life was marred by a lot of personal tragedy, especially with his children. But the realm was better for it. And you have kings like Robert who just don't care about ruling. You have kings like the Mad King who just like, well, he went crazy after this thing called the Defiance and of Duskendale, where he got kidnapped and he was in the cell. It was like a whole
That
thing.
was a whole thing. Shout out
It
to
was a whole
Bryson
thing.
Selmy.
Yeah, shout out to Bryson. So, I mean, they shouldn't have killed him the way they did, but whatever. That's tangential. Viserys' problem is that he is dividing the realm, but he's too blind to see. He does not.
And
There's
he's
this
too weak to
thing.
fix it.
He's too weak to fix it. Exactly. Daemon. He needs Daemon by his side. Daemon was right when he called him weak, and Daemon was right when he told him that he could save him from himself. Because Daemon is obviously a selfish person, but as we can tell from the end of season two, season one, episode two, when he was talking to Corlys Velaryon, he was like, hey, I can say shit about my brother, but you should never say shit about your king. And that, to me sums up what Damon's personality is like. He's ambitious and he wants, goals. He has goals and he wants to be revered. He wants to be a legend, which is why he was so determined to take the stepstones without help from his brother, which we'll get into later in the episode. But at the end of the day, he would never betray Viserys in the same way that Viserys is betraying himself. If Viserys had listened to the strong, what I don't remember his name, the Lord of Whispers or whatever, he should have married. I mean, I feel bad saying he should have married the 12-year-old girl, but like he also probably shouldn't have married the 14-year-old girl, But he shouldn't. He should have made a better alliance than the one he did. And then him now like gaslighting Rhaenyra in this episode, being like, "Oh, you must marry for the realm." Even I'm not above traditions. I'm like, no, you could have made the decision to put Rhaenyra in a stronger position by marrying the 12-year-old. But you're making bad decisions and you're dividing your court into two, and you don't even see it, which is just the wild part. You don't even see it. It's so unfortunate. The series is really, really making bad decisions. And like, even as someone who kind of knows where the story is going, I'm like, wow, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think Paddy Considine is doing such a good job of bringing this guy to life because
Hmm.
in the book you knew Viserys was making bad decisions, but you thought he was just like, haha, it's okay, it's all gonna be fine. Like that's the vibe that you generally got from him. But here you can see this guy is somewhat aware that the decisions are bad, doesn't
Yeah,
know how to make them good, and is aware that people are kind of walking all over him. He can't
yeah,
take control over Nera. He can't control Demon. He can't control some of the people in the court. I mean, we start to see the Lannisters more like they're described in the books, right? Being consistently proud of everything that they have that other people don't have. They're not even the wealthiest house in the realm yet. I mean, that's still the High Towers, but you can see that this
no,
dude
no, the
is.
Valerians.
Oh, sorry, I meant the Valarians. Yeah, so that's still the Valarians, and again, the Valarians exist in the show, in the original Game of Thrones, at least in that time. But I guess we never really hear about them. Probably so we
Yeah,
wouldn't think about the Targaryens too much.
yeah,
I think they really want to hold their Targaryen references and make them very like, I guess poetic slash prophetic because they knew how it would reveal certain things about Jon.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean the Lannisters, they're just what you'd expect here. It's kind of like if you can see it just becomes very clear that people like Tywin and Jaime are descended from them, right? It's just
Yeah,
it's so clear. Like this dude, It's like Viserys says, his pride has pride. It's like, bro, stop
Yeah.
talking about yourself, please.
Yeah. He even like I don't know. I was hearing Peter Dinklage when he was talking. I don't know if he was trying to
Right?
sound like Tyrion, but I was hearing Tyrion. Like literally, you didn't even when I just saw that character, like bro, is that ain't who I think it is? I was like, yes, that is Tyrion. I can hear the Tyrion Lannister, but but Viserys though, like bad decisions. Is this like to speak about Lannisters? Is this saying that Tywin has in when he's yelling at Joffrey one of these times, like any man who calls himself king, when because Joffrey was always like, I am a king, and he was like, any man who calls himself a king is not fit to be a king. Like you don't have to scream, I have power, and I feel like what Viserys
Yeah.
is doing. It's
He
like
did that,
he
and
is the
it's
king.
definitely a good callback. It's a
Yeah,
good callback.
he's the king, but like back it up. He doesn't have anything to back it up. He's just out here, having a tourney. Like, how can someone be telling you that they so the war in the Stepstones is just it's a war. That's all we need to think about it. But for those who are interested in the world a bit more, the Stepstones lies between Westeros and Essos. It's like a small bunch of islands, and it's
Hence
a
the
very
name.
important, hence the names, and it's a very important trade route. Now, the central problem right here about the Stepstones is that Dorne is next to the Stepstones, but Dorne is not yet part of the Seven Kingdoms. So, if the Stepstones falls to the Eastern Kingdoms, then there could be an alliance between the Dornish people and Essos, which means that could be a threat to the remaining six kingdoms. And
Somehow
additionally,
Viserys doesn't get this.
exactly, he doesn't get that. And additionally, the Stepstones is literally the most important. It's like the Suez Canal. It's a very, very important shipping route. So you cannot afford to cripple your economy, and you cannot afford to make your allies band together. So that is just the problem in the Stepstones. Cordy Valerian is right. You can argue about whether his execution of retaking the Stepstones is right or wrong, but he's right in the sense that the stepstones has to be taken. And how can you're one of your masters of I think your master of ships that come up to you and one of the Lannister twins come up to you and be like, oh, these motherfuckers are losing the war. If they lose the war, we might be fucked. I'm like, oh, tell me about it in 3 days. No, that's a bad
Seriously,
king. That's a
like how
bad
would
king.
Tyler like Lannisters are usually very chill because they have
Yeah,
not that much to worry about.
yeah,
And Tyler Lannister is like, yo, bro, I'm scared. Like
yeah. You
we have
should
a
be.
real problem
You
here.
should
And
be. It's like he's just out here complaining about the politicking, but that's all he's doing. He's out here going to go hunt a boar that he could barely even sorry, not a boar, a stag that he could barely even kill. I don't know. Viserys is like he's obviously a tragic character, but like I'm like, bro, no, come on. Take some responsibility for your actions. Like it's literally just no, he's a bad he's making bad decisions, but hopefully he makes one or two good decisions as the story
Mhm.
goes on. Um, but yeah, it's not looking good for him. But the Lannisters are in the picture though, and I love how they're twins again. I'm like, oh, are they also like an incestuous twin pair like Jamie and Cersei, the two Lannisters that got added? But that's probably not likely. But yeah, we've added, as the story has grown a bit more, we've added a few more characters. The Lannisters now, there's this character called Clubfoot. There's Joanna Swan, who was the character who was mentioned a bit offhand, but she was kidnapped and sold to a pleasure house and lease. We've seen Aegon now, who is Viserys' second child, first son, and obviously that is one of the things that is stoking the complications for the throne. So right now,
Yeah.
if you look at it, if you've watched the season 1 episode 4 premiere, there's a jester who's basically saying who will be the next ruler is either going to be Daemon, Rhaenyra, or Aegon, even though Aegon is just a baby. And it's there's just a lot of turmoil in terms of the line of succession should be clear. Rhaenyra is the heir, but obviously this is a patriarchal society, and yeah, people don't want her claiming her
That's the
birthright.
theme of the show, though, right?
Yeah,
Like
it
that's
is.
literally the theme of the show. We even see it in the whole like weird ass proposal from Jason
Mm-hmm.
Lannister, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's now 17. Is like, hey, marry me. I have gold, as if she's not a Targaryen. Like she is a literal Targaryen that rides a dragon. It's like, oh, marry
Exactly.
me. I have gold. Do you think I don't have more gold than you? Are you
Gold
dumb?
don't help.
That's number one. And he's like, oh yeah, come marry me and leave the Red Keep, leave court, leave being heir to the throne, leave Dragonstone, leave everything you have, and just come and live with me in Castle Rock. You know, it's really tall. Like he's like, oh, it's a top of cliff. She's like, no, thanks. Thanks for the wine, though. Bye. And then he goes
Yeah,
to ask Viserys himself, and it's like it doesn't seem that way at first, but that really solidifies and supports the theme of the series, which is essentially women say no and the men ignore them.
Yep.
That's literally it's like men ignoring women when they say no is just like the theme of the series, and we're going to see
Yep.
so much more of that. So yeah, you guys definitely uh, just prepare for that, honestly, because
Yeah.
it's gonna get worse. But yeah, I did like how at the beginning of the episode, speaking of dragons, we saw Caraxes in action.
That dragon
That
is
was
beautiful.
beautiful.
That
That
dragon is
was so
beautiful.
beautiful.
Like
I was
the
just gonna say
scene where she's flying away and like she's just like I don't know, twirling in the sky and like the long neck. I'm like, oh god, that is so
because
gorgeous.
it's a deformed dragon, right? So
Yeah,
you see
it's
this
beautiful.
snake like it's like
Yeah,
this snake like neck because the neck is so long. There are these tiny wings on the legs too,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
sort of like a mix of the Western dragon concept and the Eastern
Eastern
Chinese and
dragon
Japanese
concept.
dragon concept, where it's like slithering through the sky,
Yep, yep.
but like
That's
it actually
exactly
has wings because the Chinese dragon, um, or at least in the Japanese version, let me say, they don't tend to have wings. They really just float through the sky and they're
mm,
surrounded by clouds.
mm.
So we kind of see a little bit of that here because of that like sort of slithering movement, but then there are
Yeah.
wings. So there's
Wings.
this real sense of like majesty that's really scary.
Yeah.
And right from the beginning when they're like nailing people and then someone shouts Zaldrizes. I like once I heard Zaldrizes, I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad that in Essos people are speaking Valyrian. That's nice because Zaldrizes means dragon. We hear
Mhm,
Daenerys use that word a lot. And yeah, I kind of felt for that dude who was getting nailed because I knew he was gonna die. I just knew he was gonna die.
mhm.
Like Drehar is nailing him to a post, and he's screaming. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna come for you. They're gonna come for you." And it's like, "Yes, thank you. All hail for his Daemon. Daemon, save me."
Save
I
me,
knew,
save.
I knew he was gonna die. I just thought he was gonna get burned. Right? I didn't realize they were
Uh,
going to land on him. Oh boy.
land on him. I thought we were just gonna come and burn everyone in the field. I did not expect that. But
Yeah, that was
honestly,
an
dragons, man, and
interesting touch.
I just love how like it's just so like so when Leiron towards the end of the episode, which we'll get to in a bit, but when Leiron flies into town to save Damon, like initially I thought it was going to be what's it Damon's dragon Syraxes what's Damon's
Caraxes.
dragon's name? Caraxes. And initially I thought it was going to be Caraxes, but I was just looking at the dragon just when I was flying and I was like, no, that's not Caraxes. And I love how like I can identify which dragon he's riding. That dragon is Sea Smoke. And I was like,
That
oh
is
my
sea
god,
smoke. Yes.
that's a new dragon. Like, and I could tell just by looking at it that it was a new dragon. Whereas with Danny's dragons, I still don't know which dragon died north of the wall and which died in King's Landing. Which was stupid,
Hmm.
but whatever. Those that was just very badly done. Those dragon deaths, in my opinion. But the unique, identifying features of all the dragons is amazing. And obviously, we've seen Lena grow up now. He was a
Yeah.
kid when last we saw him, but man, war makes people,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
mean
older than their
the man
years.
has glowed up, and
Yeah,
we thank God the
yeah,
young shall grow, as
yeah,
they say
man.
on Clubhouse, right? So I mean
So,
it's really cool because like you said the dragons are very easily identifiable here. They're very distinct visually, and
mhm,
that's not we did see a little bit of that in Game of Thrones, but they were really kind of the same dragon, slightly different sizes
mhm,
and different shades of black essentially. Like one was reddish black, one was gold black, one was like I guess greenish black, and Drogon
yeah,
was really the most distinct one because I guess he had the most story purpose.
yeah,
But it's cool to see that like these dragons are not just different in color; they're different in shape, they're different
yeah,
in sound, they're different
yeah,
in the way they move, they're different
yeah,
in flight. It's really nice. I expected Caraxes to show up kind of at the end, but
yeah.
it
Me
was really
too.
cool to see Lena. Once I saw Lena, I was like, oh wow, they really got the color of sea smoke.
Yep,
Like that
yep,
is that is really really nice to see. And we actually saw another dragon. Like it wasn't just sea smoke, right? There were two dragons, and that was kind of fun. Wait, were there two? There were two, right?
what's the second one? I don't remember honestly.
Because I thought while sea smoke was burning the guys on the ground, another dragon showed up to burn the archers.
I think it was no, that was Sea Smoke. It was Sea
That
Smoke
was
because
still sea smoke.
Lena was like woo on the top of the dragon.
That guy was enjoying himself way too much, man. Bro, your guys are dying on the ground. Don't scream
He's
that
like,
loud. At least,
woo.
like, try and enjoy yourself just a tiny bit less. This is still a
Yeah,
battle. But,
yeah.
I
And
mean,
I'm sure
shouts out to
Corlys was
him.
feeling like like an awesome dad. Like just imagine you charging the battlements and you just see your son just flying a dragon above your head. I'll be like,
He's like, "Ah, I did
shit,
well. I
that's
did
my
well.
homie.
It's like, that's my
Burn them kids. Burn them all.
it's really nice. I mean, yeah. Either way, like it was very good to see them in action that way. I mean, it's really cool that we get to see a world where dragons appearing in battle was a real thing that people were afraid of. You
Yeah.
know, in the original series, that wasn't the thing people thought about. People got a bit of a taste of that when Rob started riding into battle with his direwolf Greywind, right?
Yeah.
So imagine the up jumped horror of, of
Oh God.
of
Yeah.
already being like, okay, I'm gonna fight this battle. I have these weapons in my hand. I might die, even if you're very confident and you're like, I'm gonna come back alive. There's still in the back of your mind, like, yo, what if a dragon shows up though? Like, really though, what if a dragon shows up,
That's
and what
GG's.
what 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 are we gonna do? And then
That's
in these
GG's.
guys' case, like,
Yeah.
that's what happens. The dragon does show up, and
Yeah.
they get roasted, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to see how that dragon fire really, um,
Yeah.
I guess how it's portrayed on screen, really, how it affects people, physically. We see how it's not just like people are getting burned. Like the fire has weight, it has real
Mm-hmm.
weight to it, and people are kind of getting crushed by it. They're getting disintegrated in some
Mm-hmm.
cases if they're taking it head on.
Yep.
And I like how the cinematography of the show is such an active participant in the storytelling. Like it's not like it wasn't in Game of Thrones. It definitely was. It's something that these two shows have in common that really sets them above in terms of production value. But I really love that shot where they're talking about the battle and their resources. It's been
Yeah.
2 years, and then we
Yeah.
start with the ships, and in my mind I'm just like, oh my god, I hope that doesn't hit. I hope that doesn't hit. I hope that doesn't hit. Then it misses again, it misses again, and then it hits the ship in the middle. And all the while we're backing up, then we start to see guys on the ground. Then we
Yeah.
start to see guys on the cliff, and then we start to see the heads of the army actually discussing at the war
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
And that is such a cool thing. Like that is, I mean, I dare say I've never seen a more effective use of a slow back out. Like I
Yeah.
just I don't think I've seen that. Like that was just
Yeah.
really nicely done,
It
especially
gives you an
since
amazing
most of
sense
that
of
is
scale.
CG. Like most of that is CG. Like, and here
Yeah.
we are, like having it look so real.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely living in some good times to be watching TV.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, that was nice. And
But
I mean, speaking of good times on TV, right? As I'm sure you've been thinking, just like me, rich black people doing cool stuff.
yes, yeah, like literally. Oh my day! So Westeros obviously, well, not obviously, but in all the source material is a very predominantly white society because there are two main races of people there. They're the first men who worship the old gods in the north, and then there are the Andals who are like all the Lannisters and the non Targaryens, Lannisters, the Aryans, and all those kind of names. And it's kind of based off in a weird way like European history. So like obviously you had this, the native like Celts, is that what they were called, the Celtic people who were like the Britons and all who were like in England up until a point until this guy called, I think it was William the Bastard or something like that, was a Norman
Yeah,
invader who came over, and like you could see the change in the English language after his conquest because all of a sudden like words started to get more complicated as they were you added French and all these other Romance languages to them, and anglicizing of the Celtic languages, and it changed. And that same thing exists in Westeros. But the commonality is that it's all white people. So one of the creative liberties that was taken with this new seasons of House of the Dragon was they picked the Valerians black. And what that just means is that there are a lot more people of color in Westeros, which was never a thing before. And I'm very, very, very happy to see. And they all have dreads. And Leno is looking good today. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see more of the Valerian family because we were introduced to Corlys's. I'm not sure if that's his brother or his nephew. I think it's his nephew.
are you talking about Vaymond?
Vaymond, yeah. I think Vaymond is
That's
his
his brother.
nephew. Oh, it's his brother?
It's his
Okay.
brother. Yeah,
Okay,
his
okay.
younger brother.
Yeah, Corlys's younger brother, basically. So we've been introduced to a new member of the Valerian family. We've seen Laenor grown up. We haven't seen his sister, though. But we'll probably see her in the upcoming episodes. So right now,
She's
the
still
House of
looking for
Dragon.
Vhagar, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because obviously, if you remember from episode 2, she was having a conversation with Viserys about dragons, and she was most interested in Vhagar. So I'm sure she's probably somewhere dreaming about how she's gonna go talk to this dragon that is missing somewhere. But yeah, House Valerian right now they're in a good spot. Honestly, I mean, obviously they're pissed off at Viserys for passing over the 12-year-old daughter in terms of the succession line. But they have what, 3 4 dragons, maybe three, two. They have a few dragons basically, and then they have the friendship of Daemon, who also has his own dragon. So they're just in a good spot, right now. And yeah, it's a good time to be black in Westeros.
which is
Uh,
something nobody has ever been able to say ever. So
yeah,
I really like that
I
we can proudly proclaim it.
yeah, good time to be black and more dragons. But speaking of 12-year-old daughters, so obviously last episode we were the fandom was shocked by hearing the proposal of a king who's probably in his 30s, 40s to either a 14 or a 12-year-old girl. And this episode took it to the next level by proposing a 17-year-old get betrothed to a 2-year-old. How do you feel about
I feel that we're losing our bearings. The
that?
world is on fire, and although Hightower needs to maybe shut up, I think that he's very used to the king just agreeing to whatever he says. That
Yeah,
maybe he's lost sense of what makes sense.
yeah,
Not only is that kid a 2 year old, right? That kid is her brother, which is fine on some level because they're Targaryens, right?
yeah.
But there's never been that big of an age gap in a Targaryen wedding. Usually, or in a Targaryen betrothal, like usually it would be siblings that are close in age. Some of the other siblings may marry outside of the family, like Viserys did. And at this point, mind you, they're not as committed to the whole incest thing as they were. And the reason for that is, yeah, of course, Aegon came in with his sister wives and he married both of them because, hey, I'm Aegon and I have dragons and two sister wives. But, you know, he had kids with both of them. And we know that, as we've said several times, the main Targaryen line is descended from Rhaenys. But like I said before, we don't really talk much about Visenya and Maegor. So let's do that a little bit, right? Shall we? Visenya had Maegor, and Maegor is known as Maegor the Cruel. And it's not just because, the songwriters and the poets wanted to label him a certain way. That dude was a big problem. Now, of course, it takes a while to build a gigantic castle. So Maegor was actually the one who oversaw the completion of the Red Keep. He he essentially push things to go really, really fast, for them to go really, really far. They has dungeons upon dungeons, things we never really see in the show in Game of Thrones. We saw Ned Stark kind of like in a dungeon before. That may have been in there. There are secret passageways. There's a part inside of the Red Keep where the royal family lives called Maegor's Holdfast, which is why it's called that, right? And it has spikes coming out of it. There is a moat inside the castle separating the rest of the building from this part so that only trusted people can get in there because of the paranoia and because of the general idea of fear that he wanted to propagate at that time. And then once the Red Keep is completed, he killed every single person who worked on it. All the stonemasons, all the architects, everybody. He first cut out their tongues and then he killed pretty much the rest of them because he wanted it to be clear that no one would ever know the secrets of how the Red Keep is constructed. Until today, many people don't know because everybody who worked on it was killed and all the records were burned. Right. So this dude was really, really cruel. And he had six partners. I kid you not, six. And this is was a problem because he kind of annoyed the faith of the seven. Like they were kind of already iffy about the Targaryens, but they couldn't do much against Aegon. But they were like, okay, fine, I guess we're just gonna have to deal with this since we can't fight their dragons. Then Maegor shows up and is like, yeah, not only do I have dragons, but like I'm gonna take my father's whole thing to a new level, and I'm going to have six different partners, and I'm going to have children with a whole bunch of them, which didn't work out too well for him because none of his children inherited the throne, number one, and he died on the throne. But also, the faith became the faith militant, which is how the whole battle between the Targaryens and the faith started in the first place. It started because of Maegor and his whole thing of I want to take the whole Valyrian decadence to the max. And eventually, of course, they win against the Fate Militant, but they also have to strike a deal with them. As we know, the Fate Militant comes back in Game of Thrones,
Hashtag Cersei.
almost 300 years later, because Cersei wants to do the same stupid stuff. Again, people not learning from history, right? And then the High Sparrow in season 5 basically double crosses her and uses that the whole faith militant thing against her because I mean that's what happens when you arm a whole bunch of religious zealots. Like, what did she really think was going to go on? But anyway, I've thought about Cersei's foolishness at length. It is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
But looking back to Maegor, I mean, that was what created that problem for the faith. So now were kind of removed from that because between Maegor and now we have Jaehaerys, and Jaehaerys has kind of given everybody a breath of fresh air. But Viserys is kind of taking that fresh air and he's kind of miring it into this weird little like stuffiness in the air.
Yeah.
And the idea that Otto would suggest that Rhaenyra marry not just a
It's
2 year old,
a
but a
2 year old
two-year
brother.
old that is her brother. You trying to like the Faith Milton are gonna be like, bro, I thought we had an understanding. I
Honestly,
thought we had like what?
when I heard that scene, I was like, that's a better option than this nonsense that Viserys is doing. Because
In a
you know
sense, yes. That's the
it,
ironic thing about it.
it's I mean, obviously it feels weird to say it, but like if that decision goes through, obviously it's looking like he's not going to go with that decision, but like if that
Uh-huh.
decision goes through, I'm like, at least these are like you're uniting the claims, because technically, if let's just assume the lords and the high rulers of Westeros agree to go with that, decision, and sorry, not that decision, agree to honor Rhaenyra being queen, then at least Rhaenyra and Aegon kind of be like co-leaders in a way, where like the sexism would
Yeah.
make Aegon seem like he's the king, but Rhaenyra is still the king. But again, the is it Harry Strong? I always forget his name. He came up with the what I think is
Lionel.
the best
Lionel
Lionel
Strong.
Strong. He came up again with he told Viserys the truth. The same way he told the truth before he got married. They were like, "Yo, Viserys, you should marry this 12-year-old girl." And now he's coming in and you should tell your daughter to marry the 12-year-old girl's younger brother. Or is he younger or older? I think he's younger in the books, but
I
older
think
in the show.
yeah, either that or they were twins, but I
No, they're
think he's
not
portrayed
twins.
to be they're not like no, sorry, that was a different set of people I'm thinking of,
Yeah.
which I probably should not be mentioning. But um but they're definitely he's definitely older in the show.
In the
I
show,
think he's
yeah.
portrayed as being older in the show, though we
Yeah.
haven't really seen her.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even though the Valarians are a lot more I guess liberal in giving people equal opportunities to shine than the Targaryens are,
Yeah.
at least at this time of their history, we're not really seeing Lena on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Maybe she's there and they just didn't want to show it to us this episode.
Yeah.
But maybe she's also doing other stuff. Like I said, she could be searching for Vigor, who knows?
Hmm, hmm.
But yeah, I mean, sure, it would unite the claims, and that would kind of quell a lot of dissent. But
Yeah.
that's a huge insult to Rhaenyra because essentially
No,
telling
it
her
is.
that because on one end it's like they could choose her brother over her. Fine, he's like 15 years younger, but sure they can choose him. But it's like not only are they choosing him, they're saying that well, as a consolation prize, you can be his queen, and and not just be his queen, be expected to have children with him. Again,
Yeah.
this whole thing was more of a norm if the two siblings were closer in age.
Age,
Like
yeah.
this in Game of Thrones world, this kid is young enough to be her son. That's number one, right? So
That's facts.
I don't know why
That's
like
great facts.
because them having her as the queen would is essentially them saying that you are only worth having on the throne if your brother is there to be the actual face of power,
Yep.
and that's a big problem. And
That's a
again,
problem. Yeah.
I keep saying wink wink, we're going to have some serious issues because of all these bad decisions. But
Yeah.
I mean, I like that the seeds are being sown, but I mean, in Game of Thrones, we always saw seeds getting sown, and then we'd have these huge like bombastic conclusions.
Hmm.
But I like that the seeds being sown in this show come with their own like action packed implications right
Yeah.
as they're sown. Like
Yeah.
we're not having to wait too much, and I think that it's cool how the series really like it really grounds you in the fact that like you don't have to it doesn't have to establish certain things. Like in Game of Thrones, we had to really build the world, but this show assumes that you know how things work in this universe, and
Yep.
we talk about and it assumes that you are ready to just see how things are a little bit different
Yeah.
just because the time is different, not because necessarily the customs are different. So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how that really affects the dynasty going forward. And I like that we don't have to, wait too much to see action. I mean, we see dragons like it's been what is it like 2 or 3 episodes now? Like,
3 episodes
I mean,
in. We've seen dragons do crazy
and we've
shit.
seen dragons. I think in 2 out of 3, or
No,
maybe
we've
all
seen
three.
dragons
No,
every episode.
all
Every
three.
episode.
All 3 episodes we've seen dragons doing crazy stuff, and
Yep.
like 2 out of those 3 episodes, have started with dragons, right? You know, we see Rhaenyra flying at the beginning. We see Daemon coming on Caraxes to like, you know, send some people to hell, and like it's just it's just a really cool stuff to watch because I
Yeah.
think that the series is going to keep people engaged in a good way because again, this action isn't just for action's sake. You know, I
Mhm.
think it's being carefully chosen. Everything is being meticulously worked on, and I'm glad to see them have that kind of enthusiasm. Like you can tell that the people working on this show have real love for the material, and you can tell that in the way the actors are even portraying the characters. I mean, what do you think of, for example, Damon, who is I know people are probably going to come for us again for saying this, but arguably the coolest guy to ever exist in the
Honestly,
Seven Kingdoms.
Darren is a badass. You can come for me. My Twitter is Fammy K. Come for me. Send me a DM. Let's
Oh
fight.
my God. I mean, yeah, if you want to argue about about that with us, we have your time. I'll just tell you
Yeah,
now. But
Damon is a badass.
what do you think about him choosing to quote unquote kill the messenger when he
Oh,
gets the news from his brother? Because I mean, like we said, like Viserys said, Daemon would sooner die than ask for help. So
yeah,
when help comes without him being having requested it, it was like
yeah.
at first I thought he was just gonna laugh and be like, "Oh my God," and then walk away. I mean, he does walk away, but first, look what he
He
does to
beats up
Sir
that
Adam.
dude.
Sir Adam, like it's like, yo, they just sent me to talk. Like
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
here to
Again,
fight.
because the Targaryens are viewed as almost like God. So what are they gonna do? Yeah, they just get his dragon and burn you if you say shit. So, like the only person that can question his authority is his brother, because again, he's shown that like Eddie, he can talk shit about his brother all he wants, but as long as you don't, he's fine. But yeah, that was I like that scene because once I saw the messenger come, once I saw the decision being made to send help, I knew Damon was going to end that conflict right then and there because he was just going to be
Exactly,
like, "There's no way I'm going to risk you now getting the glory of all my 2 years of hard work. No way in hell." And
100%. Like
that just shows
he
how much
risked
of a
his life.
badass he is. Yeah, he
Went
literally
in
was like,
without his
"Hold up,
dragon. Like,
hold up."
and he had to lie about it. He's like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna wave a white flag. Like
yeah,
this whole thing is going to end. Like, let's finish it off. And then,
yeah,
of course, he turns on them. Like he shows up on a freaking rowboat. Like
yeah.
he shows up like
That was an
on tiny
amazing
little boats.
sequence.
Like
It was an
that
amazing
that was really good to
sequence.
see because we don't really hear him speak. Like we don't hear Damon's voice after the opening scene of the episode. We
Hmm.
just see his facial expressions, and we see the tumult going on in his mind. And Matt Smith is putting all of that on the screen so well. Like
Rent is
this
due.
dude is a triumph for this show.
Rent is fucking due.
Like
Rent is
nah,
due.
like it's mad honestly because I mean, first of all, the when he was beating up Sir Adam, right? You can see do you see how many people it takes to hold him down? Like how many people it takes to like just bring him back? Like you know, stop hitting him. Lena is there, like you know, Corliss's other son is there, Vaemond, like they're all trying to hold him back. And then the fact that he just goes alone on a boat, it's like I wonder, did he
Yeah.
tell them first? And he's like,
He
okay,
probably did. He
this is
probably did.
like he's like, this is what I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
and you guys are gonna back me up. I'm sure
No.
it would have been a situation like, no, this is crazy. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go do this. If you like, back me up. If you like, don't back me up. I'm
Yeah.
still gonna go do this.
They
He
definitely
doesn't even take
discussed it.
Caracas, which is huge.
They,
Yeah,
they
they
definitely
weren't
discussed it
discussing.
because like when that scene happened when they're having the council, they're all sitting there and then they're like, "Oh, we need to draw the crabs out," and they're like, "Who do we send there?" And then I think one of them says Damon. So it was like
Yeah,
that was
it was
obviously
Lena who said
it was
that.
Lena who said it. So that was obviously like, a Hail Mary buzzer shot from the halfway line when you're 2 points down in the NBA in game 7 of the NBA finals. But like it worked. And like, he really like the crab feeder, the crab feeder, he's not the character that had the most backstory to him. But like if you can look at him, he has grayscale. So grayscale is
Yeah,
that disease that Jorah Mormont had that had to go get cured by
turns
Sam in the
you into stone
Citadel.
over
You
time
know,
and
so
affects your mind.
yeah, he has that disease. So honestly, when I saw Damon touching him, I was like, "Bro, why are you touching this guy? Don't you know he has grayscale? Are you trying to get
That was my
sick?"
first thought. So when he
Yeah,
came out, I was like, yeah, I know you killed him. Like, yes, you have a
why
Valerian
are you
steel sword.
touching
I mean,
him? That's
because
your that's
even when he like he lifted up like he waved the flag right,
yeah,
and then like his fake surrender like he's offering his sword, which is what you do, and of course that's
yeah.
not just any sword. That's Dark Sister, which was
Valerian
wielded by
steel. Yeah,
Visenya, like OG Valerian still here, and then he
hmm,
uses it and he's cutting through these guys literally. Like I mean I remember in season 1 of Game of Thrones where Barristan Selmy is unlawfully
yeah,
unlawfully dismissed from the King's Guard. And
yeah,
then he's like, even now I can cut through the five of you like carving a cake. Damon
Yeah.
is literally doing
Literally.
that with the belly. Like he
Yeah.
goes down on his knees and he slides and he swings his sword without even much effort. Somebody's leg comes off.
Yeah.
Like he's literally cutting
Because
through these
it's
guys
Valyrian
like
steel.
butter.
But
Exactly.
he's
So
also
he
like,
he cuts half of this guy off, right?
yeah,
And yeah,
just
I just
drags his
get worried.
body in.
Yeah, he drags his body and he's
Covered
covered
in
in blood,
blood.
yes.
Yeah.
And you're holding him. The whole time, like I know, like somebody's gonna like, I know somebody's going to hear this and actually laugh at me. But I
Yeah.
kid you not, as soon as I saw his silhouette and I saw him holding something, I was like, please be wearing gloves. I beg you, please be because Damon having grayscale is just we can't deal with that.
Yeah,
That's
man.
just I just hope that that doesn't turn into a thing because this man's grayscale is his
Yeah,
grayscale
it
is
was
quite
bad. It
progressed,
was
and
bad.
we can see
Yeah.
that it's even worse than when we saw him in episodes I think one
Yeah.
and two because it's really progressed. It's been 2 years, of course, so
Yeah.
obviously it's gone worse. And shout out to the prosthetics team for that because they wanted to make it clear, obviously, that this stuff has gotten worse. He's had this for longer than he
Yeah.
had it when we first saw him.
Yeah.
And even that son of the harpy half mask that he's wearing now is almost like melded into his
Just
skin.
again, yeah.
Like
Honestly, if it
I
was
feel
me,
like
I'd
he
be
can barely
wearing
even
it.
speak.
Yeah, he kind. He was making all these clicking neck
Yeah.
gestures. But honestly, if it was me, I'd have been wearing a mask. I'll have my gloves on. I'll have my hand sanitizer, and then we can fight. Because I ain't getting no goddamn grayscale in this economy.
Yeah, 100%.
No way. But I
Yeah, that's
found
true.
it
Maybe he
interesting
was wearing a
how
glove.
I find it interesting how they were actually losing that war, which is guerrilla tactics
Yeah.
that is the way to take down the Targaryens. It's don't just come into the open field and fight them with honor. You need to be quick. You need
Yeah,
to be
and that's what the
sly.
Dornish did. That's
That's what
why
the
they weren't
Dornish are
able to
doing.
get
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Because you can have a dragon, sure, but if there's no one for you to burn, then what are you going to do? So,
What are
which
you
is
gonna
why
do?
Daemon not only had to do what he did, but he had to do it in the daytime. So
Mm-hmm.
these guys would feel like it's safe to come out. It
Yep.
was the only way.
Yep. It was
And
literally the
yeah,
only way.
I mean, they had to cheat, but hey, like Alicent said, is it better for the realm if the crowd feeder thrives or is vanquished?
Exactly. Exactly.
Speaking of
But yeah.
Alicent, speaking of Alicent,
uh,
how do you feel about her maneuvers? Like, is she as innocent as
no, not anymore. Like she knows
because
what she's doing.
I
She knows
think
what she's doing.
she is her father's daughter,
She's
and
playing the game.
there is some sense of ambition. I mean, the High Towers are clearly very good at weaponizing their own tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So she's really starting to get into this guy's head in a way that her father has, but also in a way that her father cannot because she has intimacy with him,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see in this episode she's pregnant with their second child, and that's obviously going to lead to more things, more issues down the line. But yeah, it's interesting how she is now the only person that Viserys truly listens to. I mean, she's the only person that calls him by his first name.
Yeah.
I think it's very subtle, but like if you really think about it and if you really listen, like you can actually feel how like she has such authority with him and even
Yeah.
over him at times
Yeah.
because he trusts her. He always has, and it also I guess that's what happens when you go as a teenager to visit a young to
Yeah.
middle aged man and talk to him about his dead wife. I guess he
Yeah.
starts to like you.
Yeah, and it's
So
just really unfortunate because now, like, kind of everyone is just assuming that Aegon is going to be the heir, and that was like, it was honestly really heartbreaking for me to see that in this episode because it's like, everyone there swore to like, to honor Viserys, Rhaenyra's claim to the throne, but all of a sudden it's like
yeah,
when Otto Hightower was talking to his brother and to his daughter, it was almost assumed that
they're
Aegon
so
will be
fickle
the heir, and it's crazy because like literally I'm in a roller coaster of emotions. In the first episode, I was like, okay, this is going to be Daemon versus Rhaenyra. All of a sudden, she has like. Aemon has entered the picture, and now she's pregnant for another child. Who knows if that child is going to be another boy or another girl? If that child will survive, it's just so much more. It's just a
yeah
lot of a lot is just being. Viserys is doing a bad job of things. He's doing a bad job
because
of things
he's not
because
addressing
he's
the
not
issues
addressing these
even though
issues.
he knows them. I mean, I remember when he's in front of the fire, right, and he's talking to Alicent and he's speaking about how he wonders if he made a bad decision, and I'm
Yeah,
screaming at him,
you
yes
did,
bro,
you
you
did.
did.
This is
Like
why you need to
he's
face
because
your problems, fam.
yeah, and
Don't hide.
he's not sure. He's like, okay, was my I think he knows he made a mistake and he's wondering what his mistake was. But there's so many different ways that he's made mistakes here. He's like, okay,
Yeah,
was it a mistake to make Rhaenyra heir to the throne if I was just going to marry you and then immediately have a boy? Was it a mistake to get the Lords of the Realm on Rhaenyra's side when I know that they're fickle people? Was
hmm
it a mistake to marry you in the first place when I know that marrying you could lead to more children? Which so sure it's my duty, but then that dilutes Rhaenyra's claim
Right.
because then
Yeah.
it makes her more contested.
Yeah.
Because it was already bad enough for Rhaenyra, but now people are starting to see less and less reason to respect her. So
Yeah.
much that this Lannister idiot is showing up to talk to her like she's a child. I mean, it's funny because in the source material you can see that all these machinations are taking place and that they're affecting Rhaenyra, right? You hear about that from the omniscient voice that is telling the story. But
Hmm.
I love how in the show you are like, I mean, the pain is being portrayed so well, not just
Yeah.
in Viserys, but in Rhaenyra. We can
Yeah.
see how she feels so many emotions. Like her range in this episode is just amazing because
Yeah.
she's feeling pain, she's feeling betrayed, she is feeling um scared, she's feeling mistrustful of everybody,
Yeah.
she is feeling completely agitated, and she feels like she has no allies because she
She
doesn't.
doesn't. I'm like, it's okay. Millie Alrock. We haven't talked about like the actors, but she is. Oh
She's
my,
so good,
she's.
man.
I
I'm
cannot
really
picture
enjoying her.
anybody
She's
else
the
as
highlight of
Rhaenyra
me so far.
Targaryen. She has been. I'm like,
100%.
I mean, I'm excited to see Emma Darcy, but like, 'cause I know they're gonna put like a performance of a lifetime, but like, I don't want to see Millie Alrock go. But it's bound to happen. Rhaenyra has to grow up. You know, the story has to grow. Blah blah blah.
Millie is amazing.
Yeah. Oh my,
She's
her
she's
and
she's
Blood.
honestly been yeah,
Honestly,
right.
Targaryens in blood is like my favorite genre. Like, yes, like I
100%.
love seeing them in blood.
Targaryen's
It's
covered in blood
amazing.
after fighting
Yes,
people, surrounded by fire. I mean, it's why
yeah.
we're here. It's
Oh,
called Fire and Blood
did
for
you
a
see
reason.
the boar on the floor scene with
Yeah,
Rhaenyra
bore on the floor.
messing up
And
that
I'm
blood?
honestly shout out to everybody who understands what bore on the floor means. I hail you, I salute you, and I love you.
Boar on
I
the
actually just
floor.
watched that. I watched that episode
I can't. I
like
makes me
2 days
cringe.
like 2 days ago
It
just to
makes me
see
cringe.
and the way I'm like, yo, this is still making me cringe after all this
Yeah,
time, after
yeah,
all
I
these
know.
years. I
I
cannot believe they
know.
went through that. But yeah, shout out to
Yeah.
everybody involved
But
in
yeah,
that.
because
But
Robert could even handle the ball, but Rhaenyra did, you know, because Rhaenyra is the king we
Robert,
deserve, and Robert is
exactly. That
Robert's
is
life.
that is a great thing to point out because it's good for everybody everybody who's watching this to understand that they are in the Kingswood. Now, the Kingswood is this section of gigantic area of forest that, and we actually see just how big it is when Rhaenyra and Kristen are on top of that cliff at towards the end of the episode. It's huge, and its only purpose is for the king and his friends to hunt. It's like a private country club golf course, so to speak.
Hmm.
It's literally there just for the king's amusement, and that's where Robert goes whenever he's feeling like whether he's down, whether he's like, oh, I need to kill something, or like or maybe he's just drunk and he just wants to go do whatever he does. And of course, that's how he meets his end. Like he goes to hunt in a drunken
Yeah,
state, and Lancel Lannister keeps filling up his cup as he's been instructed to do. I mean, imagine being the most feared fighter in the Seven Kingdoms in your prime, and you're killed by a pig and a child giving you wine. Like
yeah, it's
Robert,
wild.
oh Robert,
But
Robert. But I
also,
mean,
if you look at
no,
like just compare the two scenes in Robert hunting and Viserys hunting, you can see that the money has come because when Robert was hunting,
yeah,
it was just him and Lancel, but now there's a whole set. There's
there's like a whole
people.
set of people. I mean, sure, like Robert went with people too. Like we know Renly was there. We
Yeah,
know a whole bunch of other courtiers were
that
there, but
wasn't
I don't think the
shown. It
party.
wasn't shown.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah,
shown,
because
and the
they didn't have
party
money.
wasn't this big. Yeah,
They didn't have
exactly.
money.
The money wasn't that much because, of course, Robert was bankrupting the
No, no, no.
realm.
I mean, like Game of Thrones, like
And the
HBO
Game of
wasn't
Thrones
giving
too, they
them
didn't have money.
money.
Yeah, no,
HBO wasn't giving
hundred
them
percent.
money like that.
They didn't have money yet. Now you
No,
can see how like
they're
like
giving them
oh,
all
you
the
want to
money
make
in the
something
world.
Game of Thrones related. Like you wanna show some decadence. You know what?
Here's the check.
Here's like how many millions you need? Like sorry, was it? Did you say five? Oh, how about 10?
We'll give
Just
you
take 10 for
30.
this
Just
one
take 30.
episode.
Just take 30.
Yeah, like it's so cool. Our real
Yeah,
world is doing its utmost best to fund the pleasure of this fictional world. So much that we're not only seeing the Kingswood, but we're seeing like where they make camp. The episode,
hmm,
like the episode is so colorful. If I had one word to describe this one episode, it would be color in all of the different contexts of color. I feel like,
yeah.
every episode is going to have like its one defining trait. I actually wanted to ask you, like, if you could pick one word each to describe episodes 1 and 2, what word would you choose?
I can describe it in, I won't just say one word, but I'll say one word per
Okay.
episode, and I'll say the three words back to back to give you a
Yeah, one word per
sense of,
episode. So like
yeah.
if episode three is color,
Yeah,
what's
so
episode
no,
one
no,
and
it's,
what's
it's
episode two?
again. So I would just say episode one is Viserys, episode two is bad,
Okay.
and episode three is decisions. Because Viserys is making bad
Interesting.
decisions. That is all that is happening. That's all I'm seeing.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Viserys is making bad
Fammy.
decisions.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Oh,
Fammy.
he's making bad, this horrible decisions. But one of my last points, because we've gone over an hour now, and Michael will start shouting again. Dreams. We've talked about this time and time again. And dreams. Dreams is dreams are a recurring part, of life. Dreams are a recurring parts of the Game of Thrones universe. And oftentimes, when people dream in the Game of Thrones universe, they're prophetic dreams. But prophecy is always like a two-edged sword. You can see something, but that isn't always going to be what shows up happens in the end, or exactly how you imagine it. Like, for instance, Melisandre was supporting Stannis, thinking what the prince who was promised, but it was John who she should have been paying attention to. So she misinterpreted her dreams. And
Because you
Viserys
see
has
what
been
you want to see.
yeah, exactly. You see what you want to see. And Viserys has been misinterpreting his dreams. You can see it when it happens when he killed his wife to for his son to be born, who ended up dying. You can see it when he's dreaming about, he goes into this whole rant, drunken rant, when he's talking to his wife in this episode about dreams and their place, and he's questioning his decisions, which he should be. But he's not going to do anything out of it because he's just not a strong king. But yeah, dreams again. It's another recurring theme in this episode. I'll be amiss if I didn't just keep bringing us back to these kind of like things when we take a step back from the plot and we're just looking at what the story is building, because dreams are the only way we can see any sort of prophecy. As to what goes into the future. But obviously, we know that regardless of what happens, um, the line is going to continue and Danny is going to be born. And the fact that Danny is born means John is going to be born. So we know that the prophecies are all going to come through, just not the way Viserys sees it. I'm sure he probably saw, let's just assume Aegon saw a vision of someone with the cat spawn dagger, stabbing the Night King. And he was like, oh, that dagger is a Valerian dagger. It's a Targaryen dagger. One of my descendants kills the Night King, but no, it was Arya. That kind of thing. So dreams are recurring and showing up again in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. But as always, their interpretations are not always what is expected by the people who are viewing them. And again, Viserys is having these dreams, and he keeps wishing for more dreams, but he's not having them. I think he's just a character looking for answers, and it's unfortunate that he
He's
doesn't have the support
obsessed.
system. He's obsessed with it, and he doesn't have the support system. He's casted out people who could be his true allies, and gone for some of what I call summer friends. Friends who only there when things are perfect and nice. Damon should be in his court. Damon should be his hand, and Damon is an
That was his
asshole,
first mistake.
but he's the asshole he needs. That's it. That's one
Yeah.
of his fuck ups. But yeah,
It's his first mistake, like not making sure that Damon was there because
yeah,
Damon really would have protected him. And he said
yeah,
it, I'm protecting you
from
because you're
yourself.
not protecting yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really sad. And I mean, even when Rhaenyra is killing that boar, I like how she gets, Damon is feeling pain and Rhaenyra is feeling pain too because
hmm,
they've both had things taken from them. And Damon is like, I'm not going to have another thing taken from me, and I'm going to win this by myself. I don't care how it happens; it's going to happen. And Rhaenyra, she doesn't have that kind of resolve yet,
yeah,
right? We see her take out that pain on the boar. I mean that boar showing up is actually a very dangerous situation. I don't know if people are aware of how dangerous that thing is. Like that's the kind of situation that could actually kill you.
yeah,
I mean, we see that it runs through, and Kristen Cole is packed. Like it packed this guy up as he ran by, and then he
yeah,
shows up, and then he's on top of Rhaenyra, and then she's managing to fight him off just a little bit. She's about to lose, and then of course he kills it, and then of course it's still moving, so she stabs it that many times, and then we get
yeah,
the whole like fire and blood reference. But I do like how her seeing that white heart at the
yeah.
end,
That was beautiful.
especially when the king and all his horses and all his men, all the kings and like his dogs, they couldn't really see that, and despite all their resources,
Yeah,
and even the way the regular heart dies is not even like it's not as glorious as you think it is. I was actually worried that one of those like
yeah,
antlers was gonna stab
yeah. Stab
Viserys
Viserys. Me too.
because
Me too.
he was doing that a bit too weirdly. He was
Yeah,
doing it haphazardly, and he
yeah.
was drunk
He was drunk, and
slash
I think he
hungover.
lost some fingers too because of like the cuts on the hand thrown.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure that's why he's wearing a lot of gloves. Because I mean, it's
Yeah,
been 2 years now. After 6 months, we saw what the rot and gangrene was doing to him.
yeah,
Who knows what's happening now? And I think that like a lot of that is coming from, the throne sort of symbolically trying to tell him you're not doing well here.
Yeah,
And I think that it's a good sign, like on maybe like Otto, we're not necessarily into like science importance, but I think Rhaenyra seeing that stag
yeah,
was
that
very,
was
very
a big
cool.
important.
And I mean the way it was depicted on screen as well was very nice. I mean, and also one thing that's very telling, not just of the story, and where the narrative is going, but of Rhaenyra's character is how she chose not to attack it,
Yeah,
because it deserves
yeah,
to be free.
yeah,
It deserves, like, you can see how she is thinking differently from all these men.
yeah,
It's not everything that you can take that you should, right? That's a message that we need to remember, and that's a message that not enough characters in this show remember.
yep,
So we'll see how it goes, I guess.
yeah. We'll see how it goes. Do you have any other final thoughts before we do our exit admin? Uh,
Um,
I think I've gone through my
I'm
list.
yeah, I'm gonna go a little crazy and point out that tapestry in so there is a tapestry that keeps showing up in every episode. In episode one, like if you want to see the clearest view of it, go check out episode one where Emma Aaron is giving birth. Now, if you can put aside your sadness for her for just a second, look above her head, and there is the most insane scene being depicted in this tapestry. And like, I'm just gonna go let you look at that and get a sense of what's going on, because it is just some wild stuff that's happening there. And I like that it keeps coming back. And it's also keeps coming back in certain places, in certain people's rooms, and in certain scenes where certain people are talking. And I think that decadence shown there is kind of telling of, what type of people these guys are.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just interesting where the dynasty is going. I don't know what we're going to see in the next episode regarding what will become of Aegon. At least, I'm glad the kid turned out healthy. That's nice.
all that
So
inbreeding.
yeah, so I guess we're definitely being given what we sort of signed up for. I'm very proud of, like, you know just the I guess just the fandom in general, right? Because I think people really stayed steadfast in a sense to the story. Whereas a lot of people kind of like they were thinking, I don't need to watch this, and even if I do watch it, it's not going to be better. But I
Yeah,
think House of the Dragon is really impressing a lot of people.
yep,
Like one of my really close friends was saying that like it's impressing him so far, like in some really incredible ways. Like he knew it would be good, but oh my god,
it's good.
I think
Really
I think
good.
after this most recent episode, it's like you really have some serious chills. We have this question of, can House of the Dragons surpass Game of Thrones, and that's what my friends have been talking about. Like, can it be better than Game of Thrones? And it's like this is something that we doubt, because Game of Thrones is still arguably one of the greatest shows of all time,
Yep.
right? There's some serious legacy to be had here,
Yeah,
and honestly,
I think it can be
honestly, we might
better.
be. I've always believed that it could be, because this, again, the series doesn't spend time trying to build stuff for us.
It just
It
gets
takes
into
what
it.
we know, and it starts in media res. Like,
Gets into
we
it.
are right into the action, and the action is it's the writing is so good right now that the action is self-explanatory. Like, we're
Yep.
seeing action-packed, engaging stuff, and we
Yep.
don't need to have other scenes like externally that are explaining what is happening there. Like, everything is being shown and not told. And I
Hmm.
think that it's evidence of the potential that this show has to surpass Game of Thrones. So
Yeah.
I think everybody should just continue to strap on, because it's going to be quite a ride, and we're going to guide you. So keep coming back.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. But yeah, thank you for joining us in back in the land of Westeros. We promised that we will sort out our contract disputes with Bankole, and we shall be back again. This time next week for another thrilling episode of Game of Thrones, where we'll be reviewing season one, episode four. As always, please like and subscribe. Whatever platform you're listening to, there's probably a follow button, and depending on the platform, there's an option to give us a rating. Please rate us highly if you enjoyed us rants and you want to keep the lights on, because you know this recession is hard. The boys are struggling.
Yeah, we don't have dragons to light
Yeah,
our
we don't have dragons,
fireplaces.
man. We don't have dragons, and obviously
So
the war in the stepstones is making things hard for us to move our goods from place to place. But yeah, thank you for
exactly.
joining us. Please like, follow, subscribe, share. It's very much all very much
Yeah,
appreciated.
And speaking of sharing, thank you so much to our social producer, Chinedu Heji. Thanks so much to Bankole again. Thank you to Jibs. We miss you. And thanks to everybody who is following along. Talk to you next time.
Yeah. Also, we are also the Popcorn for Dinner podcast is also reviewing Lord of the Rings. That episode comes out the episode comes out on Friday. I think the podcast will come out a few days later. There's also Industry that is also out right now. Podcast comes out shortly after the show, and also we have an episode with the showrunners of the show. So if you want to hear the people who came up with these concepts, discuss it with Bankole and Ao, come join us. All right. Have a good day, everyone.